In this video, we'll be taking a look back at one of the most iconic horror franchises of all time, the Scream series. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just looking to brush up on your horror movie knowledge, this quick recap has got you covered before Scream 6. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update, and let's get started. Scream is a horror movie that was released in 1996, directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. The film follows a teenage girl named Sidney Prescott who becomes the target of a masked killer known as Ghostface, who is on a killing spree in her small town of Woodsboro. The movie is a meta-horror film, which means that it is self-aware and often references other horror movies. The characters in the movie are horror movie fans themselves and are knowledgeable about the genre. This allows the film to poke fun at horror movie tropes while still being a suspenseful and scary movie in its own right. As the killings continue, Sidney and her friends try to figure out who the killer is, while also dealing with their own personal problems. The movie has a number of twists and turns, and it keeps the audience guessing until the very end. Overall, Scream is a classic horror movie that is known for its self-awareness, its suspenseful plot, and its iconic killer Ghostface. The movie opens with Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore, receiving a threatening phone call from a masked killer who calls himself Ghostface. The killer quizzes Casey on horror movie trivia and then begins to taunt and terrorize her. Eventually, he kills her boyfriend and then murders Casey in a shocking and brutal way. The action then shifts to Sidney Prescott, a high school student who is dealing with the recent murder of her mother. Sidney's boyfriend, Billy Loomis, becomes a suspect in the murder. Meanwhile, more killings occur, including that of Sidney's best friend Tatum. As the body count rises, it becomes clear that the killer is targeting Sidney and her friends. The group tries to figure out who the killer is, and they become increasingly suspicious of each other. In the end, it is revealed that the killer is actually two people, Billy and his friend Stu Macher, played by Matthew Lillard. They had been inspired by horror movies and wanted to create their own real-life horror movie. The final confrontation between Sidney and the killers is intense and bloody, but in the end, Sidney is able to outsmart them and survive. The movie ends with the implication that the story is not over and that Ghostface could strike again. The second movie takes place 2 years after the events of the first movie. Sidney Prescott is now a college student, and she has returned to her hometown of Woodsboro to promote her new book. However, her visit coincides with a new string of murders that seem to be connected to the original killings. The new Ghostface killer begins taunting Sidney and her friends again, and a new cast of characters is introduced, including Sidney's new boyfriend Derek, her friend Hallie, and the mysterious Cotton Weary, who was falsely accused of the murders in the first movie. As the body count rises, it becomes clear that the new killer has a personal connection to Sidney and her past. The group tries to figure out who the killer is, but they are met with several twists and red herrings along the way. The movie explores the concept of sequels and how they often recycle the same storylines and characters. This is represented by the character of Randy, who survived the events of the first movie and is now a film student. Randy provides commentary on the events of the movie, pointing out the sequel cliches as they occur. In the end, the killer is revealed to be Sidney's boyfriend Derek and his accomplice, Mickey, played by Timothy Oliphant, who was a film student and wanted to use the murders as inspiration for his thesis. The Final Showdown takes place at a film screening where Sidney, Gale Weathers, and Dewey Riley confront the killers. The movie ends with Sidney and her friends surviving once again, but with the implication that the cycle of violence may never truly end. The third movie takes place several years after the events of the second movie. Sidney Prescott has gone into seclusion and is living under an assumed name. However, she is drawn back into the world of Ghostface when a new killer begins targeting the cast of the movie Stab 3, a fictionalized version of the events of the first two movies. As the body count rises, Sidney reunites with Gale Weathers and Dewey Riley to try to figure out who the new killer is. Along the way, they encounter a new cast of characters, including the actress playing Sidney in the Stab 3 movie, played by Parker Posey, and the director of the movie, played by Scott Foley. The movie reveals that the killings are connected to the past of Sidney's mother, who was a famous actress. It is revealed that the killer is actually the half-brother of Sidney and her late mother, who was seeking revenge for his mother's death, which he blamed on Sidney's mother. In the end, Sidney and her friends are able to outsmart the killer and put an end to the cycle of violence. The movie ends with Sidney coming to terms with her past and finding some closure. While the third movie received mixed reviews, it was still a commercial success and helped to cement the Scream franchise as a classic in the horror genre. The fourth movie takes place 10 years after the events of the third movie. Sidney Prescott has returned to Woodsboro on the last stop of her book tour, and she reunites with her old friends Gail Weathers and Dewey Riley. However, their reunion is cut short when a new Ghostface killer begins targeting high school students in Woodsboro. The movie introduces a new cast of characters, including Sidney's cousin Jill, played by Emma Roberts, and her friends, as well as a group of horror movie-loving teenagers who are obsessed with the original Ghostface killings. As the body count rises, the group tries to figure out who the new killer is and what their motive could be. Along the way, they are met with several twists and turns, including the reveal that there are actually two killers this time around. The movie explores the concept of remakes and reboots, as the characters discuss how Hollywood tends to recycle the same ideas over and over again. This is represented by the character of Kirby, played by Hayden Panettiere, who is a horror movie buff and is able to use her knowledge of horror movies to try to survive the killings. In the end, it is revealed that the mastermind behind the killings is actually Jill, who orchestrated the murders in order to become famous and emulate Sidney's survivor status. The final showdown takes place in the hospital, where Sidney and her friends confront the killers and manage to outsmart them. The movie ends with Sidney passing the torch to her younger cousin Jill, but it is revealed in a post-credits scene that Jill did not actually die and is now confined to a mental institution. The final shot shows a new group of high school students, indicating that the cycle of violence may never truly end. The movie begins when Tara, played by Jenna Ortega, Sam's sister, played by Melissa Barrera, is attacked at home. Her boyfriend Richie and friends believe they have become the new targets, prompting the original trio to return to help. The ending then reveals that one of the characters' suspicions was correct. The new massacre is connected to the original one, carried out by the first two Ghostface, Billy Loomis, and Stu Macher. As we know, the Scream franchise features a series of films within the universe, The Stab, which serves as inspiration for people who try to imitate Ghostface. In the fifth installment, Amber and Richie are revealed to be the killers, with the motivation once again revolving around the Stab franchise and Sidney's story. After her family moved into Macher's old house, Amber became obsessed with Sidney's story and the Stab films. On an online forum, she met Richie, another horror movie fan who wanted to revitalize the franchise. Displeased with what had happened to the horror genre and the Stab sequels, Richie and Amber plotted to inspire a new film. The idea was to gather the original survivors and kill everyone in the town where it all began. In addition to this first connection, another twist helps to tie all the Scream movies together. Sam, the main target of the plot, is Billy Loomis's secret daughter, the psychopath who started this bloody tale. The final plan was to make Sam responsible for the deaths. The characters in the new Scream thought this would help create a great new film for Stab and a way for the franchise to continue. The most interesting part is that the villains of Scream 5 may have succeeded in doing just that. Sam kills Richie to survive, but when she picks up the knife, she looks like a Ghostface, just like her father. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe.